Uh, Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Baku American Center Facebook page. We are delighted to welcome you to this evening's event, which we are holding to celebrate World Free Press Month. The free and independent press, enshrined in the First Amendment to the Constitution, is one of the bedrocks of American democracy and American society. Although we don't always celebrate the way the media covers us, we always recognize the indispensable role it plays in our country. These occasionally contradictory sentiments have been with us since the founding of the United States. For example, our third president, Thomas Jefferson, who was often the target of aggressive media coverage, once stated, "Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle." At the same time, he recognized the value to our fledgling democracy of having a lively and free press. "If I had to choose between a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government," he once said, "I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter." For this reason, at every embassy in the world, we conduct events in May that deal with issues connected to the media. And today, we are very fortunate to be joined by Chris Hayes, an award-winning investigative TV journalist from St. Louis, Missouri. Chris's work is a powerful example of how journalists can protect the public good in a variety of ways. And this evening, he is going to show us several of his reports to demonstrate the ways a hardworking reporter can help his or her community to be a better place. Throughout this evening's event, we'll invite you to ask questions, which we will address. Ask your questions in the comment box, and at an appropriate time, I will take them and give them to Chris. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Chris Hayes.
Good evening from St. Louis. I'm excited to join you all. And when I was asked how long I've been doing this, I was surprised myself to do the math and learn that it's been 25 years. I've won about one Emmy for every year that I've worked. And I've won some in Phoenix, Arizona. I've won some here in St. Louis, and I've won them for a variety of issues. Some of them are consumer issues. Some of them are related to crime. Some related to government, public safety. What I like to do is try to do as diverse of report as I can. As many types of worlds, as many types of people that I can talk to. In fact, even this week, I've been reporting on the COVID-19 crisis, and I today am doing a story on a 25-year-old man who saw death and was sedated for 20 days and woke up and is celebrating that he survived this. Earlier this week, I did a story about a gym that is claiming that it has a right to be open, even though the government says it should be shut down. And it's been defying a government order for 11 days. And I've been looking into that claim of that gym, that they have a right to be open, that they want to be able to survive and pay their workers and be able to children. So I would want you to think about a couple things as a journalist. And what's cool is that anybody today can be a journalist. You don't have to be an expert in anything. You don't have to have a degree in research. Really, all it takes is to be an expert in the story that you're working on that particular moment. So if you've got to turn a report that day, you want to become an expert on that issue. And you may know nothing about it. And it might be powerful that you do know nothing about it so that you can approach it from a totally neutral standpoint. The other thing that I would want you to take away is also, along with the research, roll with it. And that means to be able to accept if it goes into a direction that you don't anticipate. You may learn something that is counter to what you think you're going to learn. You may learn something that is counter to what you've always believed. You may learn something that makes you uncomfortable and that you don't want to know what you're learning, but you have to be able to take it in and be able to tell your viewers about it. I've had many cases where I've reported on something and I've turned out to be wrong, and you have to roll with it. And by that, I'll give you an example. There was a man who was convicted for killing his wife in the St. Louis area. And I reported about how he was the only suspect and he was arrested and he went to jail. And I wasn't really wrong. I talked about how I was wrong, but but I was reporting the facts as I knew them at the time. It turned out to be wrong. He was an innocent man. And by rolling with it, I mean that I was able to roll with what I learned later. I learned that there was another suspect who actually turned out to be the real killer, and who I am still reporting on today. It's a story that's gone international, and that woman's name is Pam Hupp. And I was able to do that story and to stay at it for 4 and 5 years now, because I was able to not close my eyes to the truth and different things that would come to me. And it's important to just always be open-minded and look at things that maybe you want the story to be over. It was easy. It shouldn't be easy. It should be about the truth at all times. And then the other part of that is you're going to earn a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect from people who I've even done hard-hitting reports on. To this day, I will have police officers or government officials or just regular business people that call me today, even though I've done a negative story on them in the past. And they've told me sometimes, you were right, Chris, and you treated me with respect. And now I am coming to you and I'm giving you information because I know you will handle it the right way. In fact, yesterday, I got a call from a police officer who was involved in the wrongful conviction of the man I talked about earlier, who I did negative stories about how he went after the wrong person and that he was improper in his interrogations. And he called me yesterday and said, I want you to look into this case because I know that you will be fair and you will leave no stone unturned. So one of the Emmys that I pulled down from my countertop is actually for what's called daycare dangers. I've done a lot on child care facilities. And in Missouri, you can get online and you can pull inspection reports of any child care facility. And what I decided to do one day was to put together a map of all the child care facilities and where there were what's called substantiated complaints. And I would plot points on the map so people could open up that particular child care facility and see what the substantiated complaint was. And they could decide whether or not they were willing to take their child to that child care facility. Those stories received so much attention. Then I started to get tips from not only families, but lawyers. So we're going to show you a report here in a second that went viral. It went international. And it was about a child care facility in which a lawyer said, I have some surveillance video that you're going to want to see. And this is that report. Might be able to hear sound. Richard, if you can hear me, I think that there may not be sound on this report that people might not be able to hear. So I apologize for that. It looks like we're not able to hear that piece, but
I'm sorry as well. We're having some technical issues. I'm sorry about that, Chris.
okay.
Indeed, we'll see if we can fix it in the background.
Yeah, and if you get that fixed, let me know. Technical difficulties. It's amazing we can talk across the other from sea to sea. You know, so that's great. The thing about that report is that the outpouring from the community was just tremendous, and I was able to find other issues that were important to viewers. And it's really important that you don't stop just with one story. A lot of times reporters are very much done with what they're reporting on after one report, and they move on to the next. And as an investigative reporter, one of the things that I think is important is to continue looking at what else may need to be reported on. Is there something that can change as a society? Is there something that can change to make kids safer? So in this case, I alerted the governor of Missouri. The governor of Missouri shut that child care facility down. I looked at the inspection reports for that child care facility to see what led up to it. And I was able to find reports of that teacher lying to her supervisors about what really happened. Then there was a police investigation, and I did a separate story on what that teacher told police. And I asked for the interrogation tape, and I was able to get the interrogation tape because the investigation was closed. And I went to the prosecutor's office where that teacher and another teacher who was involved were both charged with endangering the welfare of a child. And I went to those court cases. So this one story has led to 6 or 7 follow-ups, and also started a conversation in the community about what's proper, what we need to do to protect kids, how you can know as a parent if something is going wrong. Sometimes it might be important to do a story on what somebody is doing good. It could be a child care facility that has cameras inside where you can check in on your child from afar. So I would just really encourage you to go beyond where you think the story ends, but go beyond that finish line and keep digging.
Very good. Should we try our luck with another piece?
Yeah. So is it the mattress piece?
We can do the mattress piece, shall we?
Okay, yeah, I'll just set it up just a little bit. This is a piece from 20 years ago, so you're going to see a young Chris Hayes. But this is interesting because I did this report twice. I found it in Phoenix in the course of 4 years. This issue arose again. And the one thing I would tell you about this is if somebody comes to you with a tip and you think it's unbelievable, don't decide because it's unbelievable that you're not even going to give it the time of day or that you're not even going to give it the energy. Because this was one of those tips that was unbelievable that I said, there's no way this is true. And it took me going to the location to find out. And then I'm looking at it and saying, oh my gosh, it's true. And that's this piece.
1 second, I beg your pardon.
No problem.
Let's see if is the sound working now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, perfect then.
Mattress, but take a look at what we found. Under the covering is an old, stained, and smelly mattress.
Good grammar and spelling
are darn commercial.
Oh my God, we're really having good luck here.
Oh man, you can
good old
skip
YouTube.
that ad though, so it goes quicker.
Okay, right. Oh,
One more.
You are kidding
Hi, my
me.
name is Dr. David Oliver, I'm a chiropractor, and today what we're going to talk to you about is forward head
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Forward head posture is basically
How is this happening? Okay, let's I will
the number one posture.
Hey, it's not your fault. This is
Really,
this is the world of advertising and surprises.
indeed, you get what you pay for, right?
Driving our cars, texting on our phones,
I've
all
never
those
seen this
activities.
before.
Video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to check out our website backintelligence.
Like it just needs to be closed. That. that report. There we go.
Very good.
I think we're back. And I'm willing to answer any questions anybody has. If somebody wants to text them in, this was a case where there was a mattress recovering operation where people in Phoenix were finding old, beat up mattresses that were thrown out, and they were recovering them with new material. So you thought you were buying a new mattress.
We bought this
And
as a new mattress.
here we go, I think.
Indeed. 1 second, let me pull this up then.
Really looks nice, feels like a good mattress, but take a look at what we found.
I hope the sound got lost again. So we are missing the sound again. And what happened is that we not only found.
I'm going
There
to
we
pause
go.
this and come back and get it back on. We'll try one more time. I beg your pardon.
From a different company. They answered a
And this was the old days of the newspaper where people answered classified ads.
Chris, if you could just keep speaking, I'm going to try to get it right with the sound on. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll stop when it goes with the sound. But this was just astounding when somebody said they were doing this, and then I was able to cut open mattresses and rip them open like a banana, and find these old mattresses. And one of the things that I did to just take it above a normal investigation where I'm just exposing this one business is then I picked up an old alleyway mattress from like the red light district of Phoenix, like the poorest area of town. And I took it to the factory and they bought it from me for $5 and recovered it.
found. Under the covering is an old, stained, and smelly mattress.
Is it working now? Is the sound working?
Yeah, it is.
Great.
This is hidden camera video of 5 investigates buying our new mattress.
There's some chance we can get it out? Take a look at it?
Yeah. This is a delivery from Imperial Mattress Company. The delivery driver tells us several times it is a new mattress.
Is this a brand new mattress?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Yes, this is a new mattress.
Sandra and Kyle Johnson say that's how it happened to them when they ordered from a different company. They answered a classified ad for a new mattress. They were pleased with the low price of just over $350. But it wasn't long before one side of the mattress sagged.
My side, and he's heavier than me, so I'm like, why is it indenting? What's going on?
The Johnsons saw a national news report on the recovering of old mattresses, so they decided to check on the one they bought here in Phoenix. This is what they found.
They began with only a small cut and could not believe their eyes, so they called 5 investigates before cutting open the rest.
It's gross. I mean, this is a dirty, disgusting, old, 60s style mattress that someone probably threw away, and they just recovered it with brand new material.
30 people slept on this.
They bought that mattress from KB's Sleep Center near 35th Avenue in Camelback. 5 investigates took in a hidden camera to find out where they're getting these mattresses. This salesman mentions a supplier to our undercover producer.
Imperial Bedding.
From what?
That's a local company, Imperial Bedding.
5 investigates found Imperial Bedding operating out of this industrial park garage near 57th Avenue in Missouri. You can see workers making mattresses. In the back, there are several old, obviously used mattresses. But in the front, you can see what looks like brand new mattresses. It looked to us like they were recovering old mattresses. So 5 investigates decided to find out for sure. We first checked the classifieds to see if Imperial is even selling directly to the public. We found this ad, Imperial Posturepedic 900, all new. When we called on the ad, a representative offered to bring the new mattress to us.
Brand new mattress? Okay.
That brings us back to the delivery. The mattress looked and felt new, but it did not have any tags.
There's not any tags on it? He doesn't put tags? He doesn't?
but they haven't came in yet.
The only thing we can really do to be sure is cut it open.
This is what we could have been sleeping on without ever knowing, Jay.
Chris, I hope there's a way to find out about a mattress you want to buy without having to cut it open.
Yeah.
Issue with investigations is you don't know where it's going to take you. So I was in a position when we had to buy that mattress, and then I didn't want to just check with one. Well, what if it's just one? Had to buy another one. And then you worry, am I going to cut it open and it's going to be fine? So there's always the danger, again, that it's going to take you in a different direction. And if it did, then I would have to roll with that. So the importance of being able to just continue on something and keep digging, I cannot emphasize enough. That was the first story I did. 5 years later, I found it again, and I had to expose it again. And then people started calling me Mattress Man. You know, I had a nickname for me because I was doing so many reports about this. And that's something I take pride in. People will give me nicknames for the stories I'm working on, because once I dig in, then I'm not going to let it go. So sometimes I will be nicknamed for those reports.
Actually, I'm wondering if I can interrupt. I mean, that's a fascinating case. I mean, we've got a couple of clips today that show instances where your reporting is going out and protecting the public interest. In the case of consumers who are buying fraudulent goods that are not only disgusting and not what they paid for, but possibly also a health hazard. I'd love to see if we have better luck going back to the first issue, which is particularly so many of us having children in daycare, the type of thing that does stimulate a lot of interest. With your indulgence, I'll try and go back and see if we can get it with the sound this time.
Yeah, great. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Here we go.
Saturday preschool, where the director waited and reported 5 days before looking at the video you're about to see. Friday.
There really is no better time than right now to learn how to become a great singer.
Okay, well, that's disappointing.
I wonder why that's doing that. That's really interesting. I'm not used to ads popping up on.
Yeah, that's interesting as one word for it, for sure. Nice looking guy anyway. In any case, well, and maybe I could have it going in the background without it being on the screen, and we can.
Oh yeah, and then pull it up afterwards. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're all just sitting at home, quarantined. I'm here in my house, and
so can you hear it now? Is it on
on the couch?
Yeah, that ad's playing.
What if I actually worked on my skills and became better?
Maybe
so
we should.
Over, I had something to offer.
Oh my God. Okay, never mind. I beg your pardon. So it is as my colleague in the studio says, a learning process for us. It's a new technology. We're really excited to be taking so many great concepts to you virtually through the online Baku American Center. But it's something we're taking some time getting used to. So in any case. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating to see ways in which you've been able to go out and through your investigative reporting bring public attention to areas that they otherwise wouldn't have seen. And have you experienced instances where this has led to action on the part of citizenry, either mass protest or demonstration, or has it resulted in government addressing issues and taking action?
Yes, a lot of times there will be action based on my reports. That daycare issue was a perfect example of that, where the governor stepped in and shut down that daycare. I did a follow-up to the daycare issue where that same facility was able then to change its name and get a new license, because under a Missouri law that allows you to be able to operate without a license if you have the blessing of a church. And so that daycare then got the blessing of a church to reopen. And then I went and I found out that the church was shut down. There was no church. It was just an empty, boarded up building. And I had a legislator step in on that as well. And she said that that was not acceptable because we still have to protect children. And that was not what the spirit of the law was intended for. So again, another example of just continuing to dig into the same issue. You'll never know what you'll find.
Excellent. Have you experienced any blowback from some of the stories? Do you ever get a?
Yes, and that is one of the reasons why it's really important to let truth be your guide. Because as long as truth is your guide, then you can come back and you can defend yourself by saying, this is what I'm shining a light on. Yes, it happens a lot. It's happening a lot right now under the COVID-19 crisis. A lot of people are angry about having to close their businesses, and they'll direct their anger at me for saying the media is lying about numbers of deaths. And then I'll point out that this is where I'm getting it and this is what I'm reporting. And then I can feel good about that blowback. I can feel good about my answer to the blowback.
Excellent. Does your station ever say you need to step back from a story? Do you ever experience that kind of pressure from City Hall or?
There, unfortunately, is always pressure, and it is scary where it can come from. It can come from an colleague who is a supervisor because of a relationship they have. It can come from somebody who has a personal interest or a bias, and they try to move you away from reporting that. And again, that's when I go back to letting truth be my guide, so I can confront that person head on and try to debate about the facts. But I unfortunately have had stories killed. I've had stories that were not allowed to be told because of advertisers. In Phoenix, I had a law firm I was going to do a story on, and they were a big advertiser, and the story was not allowed.
Oh, that's interesting. It happens everywhere that we do get these kind of external pressures. We have a question from the audience. Oktay says that Azerbaijan is in need of the latest developments in the profession of journalism. And he asks if you have any thoughts on the establishment and spreading of podcast journalism. Is that something that's crossed your consciousness in the course of your work, or even just as a citizen?
I'm very interested in that, and I think there's a lot of value in what can be brought from podcast journalism. And that's an example of what I'd mentioned earlier, that with the technology that we have now, anybody can start to be a journalist and tell stories that no one else is telling. And I would say that if somebody could start small and just take one bite at a time of that pie and think about how they can tell someone's story that isn't being told, and not think too big, but just get maybe one story on one podcast about one individual that is facing one crisis or something that somebody hasn't considered, and get that on. And then that might start a conversation, and somebody might say, well, that happened to me too. Somebody may say, well, if you think that's interesting, look at this, and that might lead to another episode of your podcast. So I'd say just try to focus on, decide what you want to do. What is your focus? Is it going to be small businesses? Start small and then branch off from there, and just try to be on a lot so that people know that they can rely on you, that you're going to have another podcast.
Excellent. Let's just try this one more time. I'm a glutton for punishment, so let's see if we can.
That's the determination that you need as a journalist.
Exactly, or something. It's a great story, so I'm confident this time we'll get it to work.
Just the audio.
Confidence is once again slightly misplaced. Okay. Oh, for heaven's sake. Okay.
Yeah, it meant.
There we go.
Here we go. Great.
Great story.
Reported 5 days before looking at the video you're about to see. Friday, February 1st, a 3-year-old child's head split open at daycare. An ambulance took her to the hospital where she had 7 stitches. This daycare surveillance shows what happened. You can see the girl appears calm and contained, standing in the same area by a chair for 2 minutes before a teacher walks across the room towards her, grabs her arm, drags her, and throws her against a cabinet. The teacher then reportedly sent this note home to parents saying she fell.
In no world did this family have any idea that what was called a fall was actually an assault until they came to see that video.
The family wants to remain anonymous. They hired attorney Jennifer Hansen.
One of the more egregious aspects of this case is that the daycare director told the family that she did not watch the surveillance tape until the family was with her.
She said that was 5 days later when the child's relative recorded this off the surveillance monitor with her cell phone. You can hear her shock when she sees it was not an accident, as reported.
That was her! No, it wasn't!
The daycare could have reviewed that footage at any time. They didn't. They allowed the daycare worker who assaulted this little girl to continue to work at the facility for 5 additional days.
The director fired the teacher after seeing this video. Police are also investigating, along with state child care inspectors. I found those inspectors also reported past cases of kids getting hurt here. May of 2018, inspectors noted a second teacher slam a child down on the cot and a third teacher holding a child by his wrist, dragging him across the room. June 2016, inspectors say staff did not have a preventative plan in place when one child was repeatedly hitting and choking another child. March 2016, inspectors wrote that a child fell out of the chair and sustained a left femoral fracture. Daycare director Sharon Williams came out to tell us she could not comment because of the ongoing investigation. Her attorney then sent us this statement today. All teachers and staff are properly trained and extremely qualified. Providing a quality education and a safe environment is of the utmost importance to our teachers and staff. It has always been our policy to notify the proper authorities and to fully comply with any investigation. We have and will continue to follow said policy. Count on us to monitor the police investigation and to track whether daycare regulators take action. For the Fox Files, I'm Chris Hayes.
Great. Well, thanks, Richard, for sticking on that. And actually, maybe with the bridge piece, if we show the bridge piece, if you can load it behind the scenes, maybe the commercials will go through and then it'll be ready. We can try that potentially.
Well, try anything.
And there was another question that came up. Hi, Chris. Thanks for sharing your experience. Certainly, digital platforms have eased the way reporters do their job. Are there any negative sides you've experienced so far? And one would be this. It's like learning it, because with Zoom, when I started to have to do all my interviews via Zoom because of the safety concerns going on with the coronavirus, it was a scramble to figure it out. I was failing to get audio. I had video that wasn't appropriate. It didn't turn out. I had to get the people to frame their interviews correctly. So there is a lot of learning, growing pains that come along with it. But then the other danger is that there is a lot of care and time that you cannot skip if you're going to do good factual journalism. And if anytime you are rushing and you're going to subject yourself to the potential of an error or a mistake, is dangerous. And a lot of times people who are running newsrooms see that ability to do things digitally as a shortcut. Well, maybe you don't need the photographer. You can get it on quicker. And so it's hard to make sure that you please your bosses who say, get it on now, get it on now. while making sure, okay, I got to make sure not only is it correct, but that I get a response from the person who I am doing a report on. So that's the good and the bad. You can do it quicker, you can do it more easily, but there's more pressure on you that could lead to you making a mistake, and that's not good. And that actually goes to another question here: how can we identify fake news? Because with fake news, first of all, this is why it's important to be abundantly cautious and make sure you're getting responses from people, and don't rush to judgment, and be willing to have an open mind and roll with things that come to you, because even if you are real news, you're going to be accused of being fake news. So you have to be able to stand by your reporting and your integrity and show that everything is based on facts. So how do you spot it? Research. And I would encourage you, if you see a report, somebody sends to you and says, check this out, and you find out it's fake, answer them. Do a little research, and don't attack them and belittle them, but say, I did some checking into this, and I found out that this expert is not really a doctor, or they were disciplined they lost their license, things like that. Do your own research, and you'll be able to find out if it's fake. And instead of just saying, oh, that's fake, just tell the truth about it, and tell that person that gave it to you the truth about it. And that's how we'll combat fake news.
Oh, that's excellent. Have you experienced your own stories, or your colleagues or some of your counterpart stations ever running with a story only to find out that they'd been led in the wrong direction and they broadcast something that turned out to be false?
Yes. And another reason why to roll with it. And you cannot bury your head in the sand if you find something that you thought was going to be one thing and it turned out to be the other thing. I'll never forget a report 10 years ago where a young man posted on YouTube that he was pulled over by a police officer, and the accusation was that the police officer asked for a bribe to let him go. And on the audio, the police officer says, just $20, $25, whatever you have. And it sounds like a bribe. I mean, it's as clear cut as it could be. I went straight to the police station, and it was an example of somebody who I'd done a negative report on before, and he trusted me and knew that I was a factual reporter. And he said, Chris, come in here. I'm going to show you the entire body cam footage. He showed it to me. And what we saw on YouTube was a very small portion. In fact, what the full video showed was this officer went above and beyond to help this person. What you heard on that little snippet was the officer trying to save this person from going to jail because they were driving without a license and they were driving without insurance. And they had a child in the back in a car seat. That police officer was charged ethically with having to lock up that driver because he was dangerous. And that child would then go into protective custody. The child would get taken away from that person. So the police officer was doing what's called a roadside booking and saying, I'm going to take you. You got to leave the car on the side of the road. You can't legally and safely drive this car. Have a relative come pick up you and the child, and I'm going to do a roadside booking. And this money, the $20, $25, will be used to pay your court fees. Normally it would be $250, but I'll just take $20, $25 so your child doesn't get taken into protective custody. What was astounding to me about this is the police chief said, your competitor with the other station came in here and I showed them the full body cam and they would not do the story because it didn't turn out the way they wanted it. They wanted a story about a bad police officer. It made me so angry that this reporter turned away from the truth that I decided I would go to the young man who posted the video on YouTube and I would say, I've got the truth. Here it is. And he apologized to me on camera I'm sorry I lied. And I had an amazing story about how you think one thing and it's another.
Yeah, that's fantastic. No, that's a really good example of doing your job and the truth coming out. I mean, the whole idea of disinformation and misinformation goes to a pretty timely topic right now, which is the upcoming election, and interference coming from both domestic and foreign sources that are trying to sway opinions, often with using false information. Have you, in the last election, 2016 or 2018, did you see things coming in that just didn't make sense, or was that more in the social media realm?
Yeah, I'm reading it daily, and it's really interesting how things are just continuing to take a turn. And just when you think you have a resolution to a case, then something else comes out or some new claim, like the Flynn case, for example, where he took a plea and now there's a possible withdrawal of that in court. So it's not something that I'm reporting on. I'm not reporting on presidential politics, but I'm following it closely and just trying to absorb as much as I can so I can take it into account in my own coverage that I've reported on our governor, for instance, who resigned in a scandal in which a audio tape was leaked involving him having an affair. And the audio tape was released by somebody who had political interests to remove the governor. And so I got an exclusive interview with the governor, who I had done some of the negative reports on, who came to me and said, I believe you'll tell the truth and you'll talk about these special interests that ousted me. And so I had him admitting to his affair and apologizing for it, but then also going on the attack about those special interests. And it's just amazing in our times right now, the directions that stories and reports will take you.
Oh, that's fascinating. I see we've got a few good questions coming in from the audience. Vafa asks, what new trends in the media you see coming in future? Is there anything you're keeping an eye on and looking like it might reshape the field?
This platform right here already is, and most of my interviews right now are done via Zoom. And what I've found really interesting about that is I'm able to get interviews that normally I wouldn't dream of getting. And one that I got recently that I was just really excited about, and I still really feel good about it, is after hearing from so many people who have been concerned about people's mental health under this current pandemic, people who are at home and isolated, and crisis hotline calls are at an all-time high. I had a group of addicts invite me into their meeting after it was over, and all of them showed themselves without concealing their identities. These were recovering heroin addicts, and talked to me about how they are meeting on Zoom to get emotional support and mental health support. And it was very powerful to hear one of them say, Chris, we were worried in the beginning that somebody would walk up to a church and they'd rattle the door and it would be locked and we would not be able to reach that person. But just today, we had somebody who was a delivery driver who is recovering from drugs and really struggling contact us via Zoom and join our meeting and say, I'm really struggling and I need help and I'm really thinking about using again. And they were all there to be able to support her through this new platform. So not only did I really feel good about hearing that people were helping themselves in this new way, but that I was able to be invited into their world in this. So that's one trend right there, right now.
Oh, that's fascinating. I see another good question. I think you've addressed this a little bit, but if there's anything more you could add, Turhan asks, have you ever felt pressure not to issue any news story, either by your management or the people linked to the story? If yes, how did you handle it? I think you touched on the first one, the first half of that you have had stories shut down. It'd be interesting to hear how you responded to that.
I try to keep the conversation going as much as I can, because I'm always going to feel good that the truth is on my side. And if I can keep coming back, and I have a few examples recently of stories that I did not give up and that were not accepted in the beginning, and I wouldn't let it go, and I would just keep going. Now, I'm told it's not going to make it on the air. Okay, so instead of just not putting it together, I'll keep going. So I wrote it. And I'll give you an example. One was a judge who was involved in the murder case I was talking about, who was making improper decisions. And there was an initial concern that we shouldn't be going after a judge, and that a judge is of the highest legal level, and this is going to get us in trouble, and nobody's going to believe that a judge did anything wrong. So I was told no. I went and I got the interview. I was told no again. I wrote the report. Here's what I wrote. Here it is. I was told no again. I continued to monitor developments, including complaints against the judge that were going to a higher court. And every time there was a development, I would just keep going back. And I said, I've got this report, and there's this development. And eventually it made it on the air. And I can give you half a dozen examples of that, where I'm going to write it. I'm going to have it ready. And eventually I feel like it will make it on the air.
Oh, that's excellent. I don't see any other questions, but just more an observation. I think it's really interesting that you've talked about how people you've done negative stories about have then said, well, I know you'll tell the truth, and invited you, and in fact, given you, it sounds like, exclusives on things because they respect your independence and your commitment to the truth. That is really a nice hallmark of the American power to journalism interplay, that the truth is the paramount thing, and you're not an enemy of the people. You just happen to be on the other side of an issue. It's great to see.
It is, and not only that, but it's also great to see from some citizens and public officials. There's some times when I have a story that I think to myself, there is no way this person is going to give me an interview, because they've got to answer these tough questions. And I've been surprised where I've run into people who thrive on it, and that they have been more than willing to answer the questions. One was a former police chief of our county who had some corrupt police officers, and he's not going to talk about this. And not only did he talk about it, but after I stopped the camera, he said he admired what I do, and that he would like to do what I do, and that he didn't mind answering tough questions, that he thought that answering those tough questions would build not only a trust, but a powerful cultural feeling in his department that this is not acceptable. And so by him answering tough questions, he thought that it would send a message to his men and women working below him that it's not acceptable, and maybe prevent something similar.
Oh, wow. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm not seeing any more questions. Is there, perhaps we could, as we begin to hit the end of our hour together, are there any bits of advice you'd give to any aspiring journalists who are thinking about going into the profession and wondering how they can make their name, particularly in the field of investigative journalism?
Yeah, I would just say to talk to as diverse of a group of people as you can, and make sure that you are reaching out to voices that are not like yours, so that you can learn something from their perspective. And I think that will be very powerful. If you can get somebody else that is unlike you to tell you about their world and their experience, that's going to be incredibly powerful.
Fantastic. I do see we do have a question coming in from Medina, who asked what the most controversial interview that you did and how it possibly changed your perception of your profession. It seems like there are a couple of different questions in there, but if you'd like to handle the most controversial interview, it sounds like the one with Governor Hawley, was that his name?
Governor Greitens. Yes, it's tough because I'll probably think of something like 30 minutes after this session is gone. It's because I've got so many things going on in my mind. But the issue with Missouri's former governor, Eric Greitens, is a good example of something that was and remains controversial. He was under fire from special interests because he immediately eliminated lobbying under his watch. But then on the other side of things, there was more money filtering into his campaign from unknown donors than any other governor in history. So he was a very polarizing governor. He also came in from the outside where he was not a political insider, and people were like, who is this guy? And then suddenly he won as governor. And that interview did bring up not only a lot of controversy, but people between the right and the left, and racial issues, and all kinds of issues that have opened up a lot of conversations. And what was the second part of her question? How has it changed your perception of your profession? It hasn't changed my perception of my profession, but just reminded me how important it is that I tell the truth and don't look away from something, even if I think it's going to be a hard story to tell.
Excellent. I see we have one or two other questions. Somebody asked that companies take facing the media training to handle media, quote unquote, attacks. And Turhan asked, what training courses have you taken as a reporter?
I haven't taken any training courses. We do have, 20 years ago I did. I probably should do it more. There's an event called Investigative Reporters and Editors that meets every year in a conference. And it's kind of like me talking to you. I'll listen to other reporters talking about their experiences and stories that they've done. And I will think about maybe something I could do in my community. Because I've been so busy, I haven't done that enough, and that would be great. It is interesting that some businesses take facing the media training, and I don't necessarily think that's bad. I don't think that handling the media has to be a bad thing. Some people look at, if you're a public information officer or you're the person in charge of dealing with the media, then it's your job to stifle or keep away reporters. And I have found that there are some people in those positions that are just the opposite, who are there to facilitate you getting the information. So I just think it really depends on the culture of that individual organization and what their mission is. Is their mission about the truth and starting a good debate, or is their mission about, silencing you and not getting you that information? In my mind, if they're there to try to shut me down, it makes it worse for them, because I'll just do a story to say, I asked for this and they didn't give it. And sometimes that makes them look bad in and of itself. So I think you should take training on how to face the media, and that training should be give them what they're asking for. One of the most powerful examples is actually a PR person for a big corporate store that told me one time, after I confronted him and he answered all my questions and I was impressed, he said, Chris, I took a media training one day, and it told me if a reporter comes confronting you about a dangerous product, don't turn them away. You might not know the answer. Tell them, hold on a second, I'm going to go get you that answer. Let them wait in the waiting room, not too long, go get the answer and bring it back to them. And I thought that was really cool.
Indeed. I wonder what that looks like in reality. I think we've basically hit the end of our hour. So I'd just like to say thanks so much for taking time out. I know it's early in the morning in St. Louis, but we're always really pleased to have an opportunity to talk about American culture and values, and a free press is foremost among them. So it's excellent for us to have a chance to share with our audience some of the fascinating important work you do protecting the public good. So everybody, join me, I guess, virtually in thanking Chris Hayes for taking time out. Chris, it's been really excellent having you.
Thank you.
Excellent, indeed. Thank you. And everybody who's joined us, please check our Facebook page periodically. We always have interesting talks. Next week, we're going to start a series looking at entrepreneurship, talking with several international and local entrepreneurs, as well as a talk with the State Department psychologist who's going to talk about what strategies you can use to handle the current quarantine regulations and making sure that we keep peace at home. But for now, everybody have a wonderful Friday evening or Friday morning, as the case is in the Central Time Zone. And thanks so much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.